Well, earlier you saw the Police Minister Bheki Cele saying that this was basically related to business in terms of the attacks, that they're business related. Also said they may well be about foreign nationals who are working in this industry. Professor Jackie Walters is a member of the Department of Transport and Supply Chain Management at the University of Johannesburg. Professor Walters, good afternoon to you. So the Police Minister says this is business related. There are 12 people of interest, he says. I suppose business related is a very broad category. Is it possible to know what's really going on in the trucking industry that has led to this violence?
No, I'm afraid not at the moment. I mean, even the Minister acknowledged that they are only speculating. I think it's pure speculation until they've caught some of these people and brought them to book and to find out, what's going on. And quite often, these instigators could be not the real people. The real people, the real brains behind what's going on may not be visible to the police and the security service at this point in time. So we don't know. It's all speculation around what the reasons for this could be. Surely one could speculate and say, yes, it could be intercompany rivalry. It could be the labour issue. It could be that it's purely because people are looking for work and they're concerned about the foreign drivers driving trucks in South Africa. But one can also not deny foreign drivers driving trucks in South Africa, especially if they're naturalised South Africans. They must also work in the country. So, this is a matter that must be dealt with through authorities and dealt with effectively. They have this task team that they've set up in 2022. One wonders what's happened there and what the progress has been since then on these matters that were brought to the task team. 11 areas I think they've focused on eventually to look at and to deal with these issues. But as you know, government moves very slowly with many of these things. It takes these types of incidents to reawaken the awareness of the issues that we have in the country and to maybe light a fire under the people making these decisions to make these decisions a bit quicker.
There's certain conditions that perhaps may help explain what's going on or perhaps help us to rule certain things out. So is there intense competition in the trucking industry? I mean, that would lead to this violence. Do we see that between companies? I'm not aware of very intense competition like that.
No, the trucking industry is highly competitive. I mean, and with the poor economy that we have at the moment, the GDP growth being very close to zero, maybe even below zero, you have capacity in the industry, and that capacity must find work, to pay the drivers, pay the vehicles, and so on. So there's extensive competition and low margins in the industry. And if we just listened to what happened in Mpangeni, Richards Bay, coal trucks are there queuing for kilometers, at the end to get into the port there. That costs money as well, and lost revenue because the vehicle's not moving. The vehicle only earns money when it's moving. So when it's standing there, it costs more money, and there's more competition for the remaining commodities that must be transported by those trucks. So yes, there will be extensive competition for this, and especially now, with the coal price that's basically halved in terms of dollar price per ton compared to maybe a year ago. The margins are even slimmer now for those truck operators going to the ports. And that's where rail should come in. It's actually a rail function. It's not a road transport function to transport low-value commodities over such long distances to ports. But we know what's going on in the rail system, and you have equal sabotage in the rail system, which it's never been surfaced again the last 2-3 days. We only talk about the trucking industry, but if you look at the rail industry, the vandalism and theft that's going on with these railway lines is really crippling Transnet. Apart from the other issues that they have about locomotives, they have problems with rail tracks, the overhead traction equipment, all those areas. Now, where's the security information around those? Why aren't we catching those people and bringing them to book? So this is like a chain reaction that we have in the whole system. The rail's not working, more trucks, economy becomes worse, and then you have surplus capacity and extensive competition for the commodities that must be transported in the country.
All of this is an enabling environment for what we're seeing now. I mean, this is the problem, as you point to. Is there a big competitive advantage for a company to employ a foreign national? Does it really give them an advantage over a company that employs a South African?
Well, it shouldn't be, because companies that employ people must abide by the local legislation, labor legislation, minimum wages. Most probably the bargaining council agreements in the road freight industry, because it's all regulated by the bargaining council. So yes, they should abide by that, and the minimums should apply. But it appears as if some companies are hiring international drivers and not paying them the minimum wages, and this looks like some of the triggers that we've had in the past for the stuff of burning and stuff going on in the industry. But it's not the way to deal with it. You know, people that are concerned about this is not the way to deal with it. They should deal with the formal structures that's been set up to deal with this. And I mean, they could also talk to these companies specifically that they know that are doing this, if they are doing that, and deal with them one-on-one, and maybe report them to the Department of Labour and people like that, instead of holding the whole industry to ransom and closing logistical corridors at the cost of the entire economy. That's not the way to do it.
Professor Walters, there's so many strange things to this. I mean, one of the things that strikes me is that there must be a trigger, and the point that I'm making is that we had these attacks and then they stopped. There was nothing for quite a long time, and suddenly they're happening in Mpumalanga, Limpopo and KwaZulu-Natal all at the same time. So that suggests there's some sort of triggering event, that there's something that has made people do this now and do this in an organized way. It's not just one person, it's not just 5 people, it's probably greater than that.
Yeah, I mean, there could be many triggers for this. It could be that the people are frustrated, lack of progress. We've heard this, we have certain people over the news media and radio and so on. And they just decide maybe this is now time to begin this again, maybe even linked to 3 years ago, unrest in the country. People are very much aware of what's happened then and how it began at Mooi River Toll Plaza. Maybe just try to link that in people's minds. But we don't know, you know, it could be something else. We don't know what the reasons are for this until they've actually apprehended some of these people and, you know, find out why they're doing it and under whose instructions they're doing this, if it's not themselves doing it out of their own needs.
The police say they're tightening security, okay, and the police, of course, have to say that, and that's fine, that's what they should say. But we are talking about slow-moving vehicles, and we forget sometimes how big our country is, Professor. Well, I forget, I don't think you do. The police can't be everywhere. You actually can't protect every truck, especially when we have what you call a just-in-time delivery system, where there's so many trucks moving at the same time.
Yes, surely. I mean, if you look at the South African economy, 88% of all the tonnages moved to this country is moved by road transport, and we have only a few very big corridors like Durban, Johannesburg, you know, down to Maputo, down to Cape Town, maybe East London, PE, and so on. If you close down any of those corridors, it affects the economy, and the Gauteng province is 35% of the GDP of South Africa. So whatever you do on this logistical corridor between Durban and Johannesburg has a huge impact on businesses here. You know, retail, wholesale, manufacturing, all of them suffer. And if you look at the manufacturing industry, it's very much geared towards just-in-time manufacturing. So they don't have storage. They don't keep warehouses, you know, just to put stock in there. But this will force them, you know, if you have these types of, if this happens on a more regular basis, it will force them to warehouse more of these products. You know, the products that are used to build motor cars and stuff like that. That will increase the cost again of those products for the consumers at the end of the day. So yes, we are very dependent, and the economy is rather sophisticated. A lot of companies work in just in time. So it's really critical that you have time-definite, time-critical deliveries at these plants. And when you have these types of delays, it impacts you know, those companies and the employees and the cost of those companies. And at the end of the day, we as consumers are paying for that. And maybe people are losing jobs because of what's going on. Companies not selling as much as they used to. Maybe people sourcing from elsewhere and so on. So it's important that we deal with this and nip it, you know, and stop this nonsense from going on. And therefore, I think it's been mentioned many times the last 2-3 days, our intelligence services are not good. Despite what the minister says, you know, they're always behind these, or after the event type of situation. They're not proactive in trying to prevent it from happening. Well, that's certainly, I think, many people's views, mine as well. Now, I think we should really up our intelligence services, and we see also the major impact, billions being lost by the mining industry because of the unavailability of rolling stock, and the rail services, 50 billion in many cases per annum. So it's something we have to address, and intelligence is core to the solving of this problem, is to know who's doing what, why they're doing it, and how to stop this from happening. So really think it's something we have to address and put more money behind this, get more intelligence services. There's so many ways of getting better intelligence.
Professor, I mean, when you look at what's happening on the railways and on the roads at the moment with the trucks, it almost looks like our economy is being strangled by violent crime.
Yes, for sure. I mean, in the road freight industry, for years now, high-value commodity transportation in many areas in the country is being escorted by escort vehicles and security people. Because these vehicles move slowly, as you've mentioned, and it's easy to hop onto them, maybe from a bucket onto them and start stripping the vehicle and dropping cargo on the road and so on. We've seen it so many times on videos people have posted on social media. So we're already paying the cost of this type of thing going on, and that's probably more the result of unemployment, people not having any money, income and so on, because they must eat every day. But this type of what we have now is escalating what's been happening for many years, and all that does is increases insurance costs, the cost of transportation, cost of goods and commodities that we consume in this country, and at the end of the day, the consumer pays for that.
Professor Jackie Walters, thank you, at the Department of Transport and Supply Chain Management at the University of Johannesburg. Really appreciate the time.